In the winter of 1895, long before modern horror relied on blood and spectacle, writers understood something far more terrifying: the quiet impossibility of a thing that should not happen. Tonight's story comes from Louisa Baldwin, whose chilling tale, How He Left the Hotel, first appeared in her 1895 collection, The Shadow on the Blind and Other Ghost Stories. Set inside a grand Victorian hotel, this story follows a former soldier working the night lift, a man proud of his discipline, his sharp memory, and his certainty about what he sees. But certainty becomes dangerous when the dead refuse to stay where they belong. What begins as an ordinary midnight shift slowly descends into one of the most unsettling ghost stories of the 19th century. A tale of silence, snow, mirrors, elevators, and a passenger who should never have been standing there at all. So dim the lights as you listen closely to the sound of the lift rising through the darkness. And welcome to episode 12 of the Lunar Rebel Horror Podcast. Hollis had worked the lift at the Empire Hotel for almost a year. He knew every face that crossed the lobby, which guests rode in silence, and which held their breath all the way down. The lift itself was a small mirrored room, glass on 3 walls, a simple lamp set into the ceiling, padded benches along the far side where ladies fixed their hair before dinner and gentlemen checked their watches. He had not been afraid of the lift, not once in all that time. The engineer had told him on the first day that the lift was hydraulic and safe as standing on the ground. Hollis turned that praise over often afterward, the way a man works a knot loose. Colonel Saxby came to the Empire in November, tall and spare, stiff in one knee from an old wound, and a saber scar across the right side of his face. He took room 210 on the 4th floor. He rode the lift up every evening, never down, and stood beneath the light with his back straight and his eyes on the floor indicator. He spoke seldom, and the few words he gave came out flat, as if he were saving the rest. In February, the colonel stopped coming down to dinner. The maid said he was ill. Hollis stopped on the 4th floor a dozen times a day, and each time the door of 210 stayed shut. 10 days passed. Tuesday night was a hard one. By midnight, Hollis was alone again. He had begun to draw the gate and dim the light when the bell on the panel rang sharp and clear. 4th floor. Some new guest, he thought, who had not yet learned the rule. The dial counted off the 2nd floor, then the 3rd, and the cable brought him level. He opened the door. Colonel Saxby was waiting on the landing. The door of 210 stood closed behind him. He wore a long military cloak buttoned to the throat and a hat pulled low across his brow. The maids had not lied. The scars showed white against pale skin, gone the color of old paper. "Going down, sir?" The colonel stepped inside, but he gave no answer. He took up his usual place beneath the light, hands at his sides, and only the lower half of his face caught the glow. His mouth was pale. Hollis set the lift moving. The cable sounded wrong, lighter somehow, as if it carried less than it should. Hollis told himself the man had wasted in bed. Still, the stiff knee that had marked the colonel's walk since November didn't seem to trouble him now. He stood as straight as a post. The elevator had gone cold, colder than the lobby. Hollis watched his own breath gather and drift toward the ceiling. The colonel made no breath at all. 3rd floor. 2nd. 1st. When the doors finally opened, Hollis saluted out of habit. The colonel walked past him in silence. His boots didn't even strike the marble. He crossed the lobby and went out through the front doors into the snow. Joe, the night porter, watched the door swing shut. "Where is he off to in this weather?" Joe asked. "I don't know," Hollis said. "I don't know where he's been either." The bell at the entrance rang almost at once. Joe opened the door and 2 men came in, stamping the snow off their boots. Hollis knew doctors when he saw them. The shorter one was already crossing the lobby. "4th floor, quickly." "It's past the hour, gentlemen." "Then make an exception." He took them up without a word. When the door opened, a nurse was waiting outside 210, with her hands folded in front of her apron. "How is he?" the taller doctor asked. "The colonel passed 5 minutes ago, sir." Hollis stayed where he was. In the open door of the lift. "I beg your pardon?" The nurse looked at him. "That can't be right," he said. "I took the colonel down myself. He walked past the porter. He went out into the street." The taller doctor murmured about mistaken identity. Hollis followed them into 210 because his legs carried him where they were sent. Colonel Zaxby lay beneath a long military cloak drawn up to keep him from a cold he would never feel again. In the lamplight, his was the face Hollis had watched while the cable sighed and the floors slid past. That night, he sat in the porter's room with the door open, and every time the front bell rang, his hands jumped on their own. In the morning, the manager listened to both their stories and told them to hold their tongues. The house would be empty in a week, he said, if word of it got out. The coffin came up the back stairs the next evening and went into the lift across the diagonal, with not an inch to spare. 4 men carried it. The manager stood at the head. Hollis stood by the gate, and his hand would not close. "I can't take him down, sir." The manager looked at him, and then away, and worked the lift himself. Hollis left the hotel that night with Joe beside him. Somewhere, a bell rang once, far off, and went still. He never rode a lift again. When asked why, he would only say that he once carried a passenger who should not have been carried. What makes stories like this endure for more than a century is not merely the ghost itself, but the atmosphere surrounding it, the quiet dread, the unanswered questions, the terrible possibility that, for one impossible moment, the boundary between life and death opened, and someone stepped through. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into classic horror, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to the Lunar Rebel Horror Podcast for more eerie tales, forgotten nightmares, gothic fiction, and candlelit storytelling from the shadows of the past. Thank you as always for being here with me, and until next time, keep the lights low, and if you hear the elevator arrive after midnight, you may not want to see who's inside.